Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this Zoom conference call so that we can update you on what is happening with the Save America Act. I want to thank you very much for all of the work that you have done, the phone calls, the emails, the petitions, showing up at the bus tour last summer, everything you've done to get the Save America Act where it is right now. Let me handle what we're going to discuss in a few different steps. First, I want to remind everyone what the Save America Act is, then what happened in the Senate this week, and then what our calls to action are. So just as a reminder, the Save America Act is a bill that originated in the United States Senate, and it went from the Senate. It was a veterans bill. It went from the Senate over to the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, they replaced all of the text in the bill with what we consider the Save America Act. It has three planks from the House side. The first one is that it requires proof of citizenship to register to vote. The second is voter ID to vote, and it's a photo ID that is the voter ID. And then the third is making states bump their voter rolls against the Department of Homeland Security to flag any possible non-citizens from to send those back to the states so they can research them further and remove them from the rolls if needed. Then the House passed that bill. It's been almost a month now since it was passed on the House side, and they sent it back over to the Senate. Because the bill originated in the Senate, it was considered a message from the House rather than a regular bill. And there are some special things that happen to a message from the House. The most important is that in order to get a message on the floor of the United States Senate, it does not require a 60 vote cloture vote to get it onto the floor. So that's very important. Last week, we heard, and a few weeks before that, we heard from Senator Thune that the only way to get to the bill was to have the 60 vote cloture vote to get it onto the floor. And during that time, a lot of people, including me, were calling for a talking filibuster. A talking filibuster would have brought the bill to the floor with a simple 51 majority vote, and then it would have unlimited debate, and pretty much nothing else could be done on the floor of the Senate at all during that time until either the debate was exhausted in terms of time and number of speeches that were allowed, or a cloture vote happened to end debate. And then we were thinking that can move us on to the final passage of the bill. During that unlimited debate, there's also the ability to have unlimited amendments. And we were urging Republicans to stay united and table every single possible amendment. What happened is that instead of taking it up as a talking filibuster, something happened about 2 weeks ago that I'm still not perfectly clear enough on to be able to communicate the Senate rules and the Senate language back to you in plain English exactly what happened, other than to say that the parliamentarian made a decision. And when the parliamentarian made this ruling and the decision, it changed the dynamics and the ability to do a talking filibuster the way we had previously understood it. So the way I described it is how we understood it and what we thought would be allowed to happen. But the parliamentarian basically said that's not the way the rules are being interpreted, and that is not correct. So then Senator Thune again said, well, we can only bring it to the floor with 60 votes. So we're going to do that, and we'll put the Democrats on the record. And basically it sounded like that was all that was going to happen. And we melted the phone lines, and we worked really hard to make sure that did not happen. So mid to late week last week, Senator Thune promised a robust debate on the bill and that he would bring the bill to the floor. And that is exactly what has happened this week. It was brought to the floor with 51 votes. In those 51 votes, once it got to the floor, it was not simply a measure of bringing it to the floor and then it could be debated for an unlimited time with unlimited amendments. They went through and they protected the floor by filling what is called the amendment tree. And so Senator Thune made, let me pull up the exact wording of this so I can describe that to you with a little bit more precision. He said, I make a motion to lay before the House the message from the to lay before the Senate the message from the House. So that was what he was starting with, and that was kind of the beginning language. He was laying before the body the message from the House. And I'm just checking to I'm close. I may not have that precisely right, but it's pretty close. The motion to lay before the Senate the message from the House. Then, as soon as he did that, before anyone else could talk, I think he then made an amendment, and that he said something like, "And I make a motion to amend." And I call for the yeas and nays. I make a motion to concur. Then he made a motion to refer to the committee. Then he made a motion to instruct the committee. And then he made some other motion to do something to instruct the referral. And maybe a few more, it kind of gets complicated. The important thing about all these motions where he's motioning to amend, then a motioning to concur, and a motioning to refer, and on, is that he is filling what is called that amendment tree. And in doing that, it protects the ability, it protects the control of the Senate for the majority party. And in this case, it is the Republicans who control the majority. So no other amendments can be added because all of the allowable amendments have been filled. That's very important. The motion to amend modified what the House sent over, and there's an amendment. Modified means it would modify it if passed. So it allows the three items from the House side, but think of those as proof of citizenship to register to vote and citizen only voting. Then the second one is voter ID. So only citizens voting, voter ID. Then President Trump, since the bill passed in the House, he's been pushing for a few other things. And he also was pushing for one of them before the bill passed in the House as part of the Save America Act. He also wanted restrictions on mail-in balloting so that mail-in balloting can only happen if you are in the military, if you are sick or disabled. So it's taking mail-in balloting back to what we would have thought of when I was young as absentee balloting. You have to have an excuse. There has to be a reason. You have to apply for the ballot, and there has to be a reason why you can't show up in person. So there's that. Then the fourth item is to say no men in women's sports. And that would be the language that Senator Tuberville has worked on previously. Then he also called for no transgender surgery on minors. And that would be the language that originated with Senator when Vice President Vance was Senator Vance. So all of those were offered in an amendment, and that amendment is kind of called the Senator Schmidt and Lee, the Schmidt-Lee amendment or the Schmidt amendment. And it has all five of President Trump's provisions for the Save America Act. Then he refers it to committee, and he has a motion to concur and the motion to refer to committee and the motion to instruct. Okay, so he's filled the amendment tree. That underlying bill is the one we ultimately want passed. The underlying amendment is the one we ultimately want passed. So a way a Senate staffer has explained this to me to understand why we go through all this procedure is to think of it as we used to think of a cartoon character who might have fallen or jumped off a building, and it's kind of going down between two buildings, and there are people hanging out of the windows of each side of the building holding a sheet trying to catch the guy so he doesn't fall and hit the ground. And he busts through the first sheet, and then there's another sheet and he hits it, And he goes through that and he keeps going and he keeps going and finally gets all the way to the bottom, and there are people standing there holding it. And as they are holding it, it finally breaks his fall. It stops him from hitting the ground hard, and he's okay and he can get up and run off. All of those different sheets that he was kind of puncturing through before he got to the very bottom, those are like the amendments in the amendment tree, and they're all there to ultimately protect that final sheet and to protect it and keep it alive, or to make it where the bill is protected to get to the final amendment to keep it alive. And that final amendment in this case is the one that has all 5 planks of President Trump's Save America plan. So that is what we saw happen as he filled the tree. So he brought it to the floor and he filled the tree. And now we have debate going on. This debate is unlimited, but each time there's a new legislative day, they restart the clock so they're able to continue the debate. And the way the debate can end is through a cloture vote, which would require 60 senators to vote for it. So when you hear Leader Thune saying we have to get to 60, that's what he's talking about, because a way for it to end and for us to get to that underlying bill that we want to have passed is that you've got to end the debate and get to 60 votes. There are a few other ways it could end. It could be that it's tabled and it just dies. It could be that they exhaust every single possible parliamentary procedure, and then maybe you could get to the bill. But to exhaust every single possible parliamentary procedure, I don't think there's a will for that. And it would get to a point where you'd have likely Democrat senators who are just getting up and going, I have a parliamentary inquiry. I have another parliamentary inquiry. I have a parliamentary inquiry. I have a question. I call a quorum call. So they just go through motion after motion after motion, and we're no longer talking about the bill. We're just talking about motions. So I don't think that part is going to happen. So that's why we say we have to get to 60 votes. Now, a lot of you, like me, are very skeptical that we can get to 60 votes. And many of you may even think, oh, well, this is all just theater. We're never going to get to 60. It's not real. It's all fake. We can't trust the Republicans. The Republicans are going to lose. The Republicans are the worst ever. But here's the thing. They did what we asked. We asked to get this bill to the floor of the Senate. It is on the floor of the Senate. And they did it against their initial reaction, which was to just have a cloture vote and never bring it to the floor of the Senate. So it is there now. We asked for debate. They are giving us a debate that we asked for. That is a good thing. And now, as the debate is happening, we are hearing both sides get up and give speeches. Some of them are giving speeches in favor of the bill. Some of them are giving speeches against the bill. And some of them are talking about other completely random things that may or may not be related to the bill at all. And they're allowed to do that. But as they're talking about the bill, we're hearing things like we've seen the Democrats say that they support voter ID. They keep getting up saying they support voter ID. Okay, well, if you support voter ID, yesterday, Senator from Ohio, Senator Husted, said, okay, you support voter ID. I move for unanimous consent, which means without anyone objecting, that we pass just the voter ID portion of the bill. You said you support voter ID, so vote for voter ID. And of course, Democrats objected to that and they prevented that from passing. Okay, so you see you support voter ID, but you just had the chance to vote only for voter ID and you voted against it. So it gives us a chance to smoke them out and to show that they're not being honest with the American people when they say they're for voter ID. They're not for it. At least last night, they were not for it. So we keep putting that pressure on them. Then the other thing is that what we're seeing right now happen on the Senate floor is actually legislating. And by that, I mean there's debate going on. there's deliberation about the bill going on, and then there are conversations that happen between senators trying to get the senators to agree to the bill. There's conversations going on between Senate staff from one party to the other, trying to get different senators to agree to the bill. And ultimately, that's what we need to happen. So when we're calling for 60 votes, and when you see calls to action from us saying call your Democrats or send an email to your Democrat senators, the reason we're saying that is because at some point we want some of them to budge. Now, some of you may say, well, that is just never, ever, ever going to happen. And you may be right. It may never, ever happen. But last fall, when the government had to be funded, we had Democrat senators who funded the government and voted to fund the government, including Illinois Senator Dick Durbin and Tim Kaine. These are not exactly moderate Democrats, but they don't exactly come from ruby red states or even purple states, but they still voted to fund the government. And so I think that is an important thing to understand, that it has happened. It's even happened in this Congress, and it could possibly happen on a piece of policy if they can come to some sort of negotiated agreement. And the longer we can keep it on the floor, the more of a possibility for something like that happening. So that kind of explains what's in the bill and where we are. Now, our call to action for you is pretty simple. And let me say one more thing. Last night, they said they are going to be in session all weekend long. That's great. That means they're going to be debating this bill throughout the weekend. They are also working on the Department of Homeland Security funding, and they're working on the Department of Homeland Security secretary getting confirmed. It is possible to kind of pause the Save America Act, to push pause on it, and then go from that over to the executive calendar to work on the nomination of Markwayne Mullin. And it is also possible to kind of pause it and through parliamentary procedure sort of set the Save America Act aside, go to DHS funding, and then come back and get back on the Save America Act right away. So don't be alarmed if they wind up doing something like that. It may happen, and that's expected as long as they come back to it. If they don't come back to it, then that's a huge problem. But if they're coming back to it and continuing to debate, they are doing what we have asked for. But we, the grassroots, those of us who've worked on election integrity since 2020, some of us have worked on it since before 2020. All of that, these are common sense changes that we know the vast majority of Americans agree on. So your call to action is to call, if you've got Republican senators, to call, post on social media, write letters, not so much letters, but emails to them through their email portal on their website, thanking them for bringing the bill to the floor and urging them to continue the debate until they get the bill passed. So stay on this bill until you pass it, and make sure that is sandwiched in between thank you, we appreciate what you're doing, stay on it until it's passed, again, thank you, and we look forward to you passing the bill. So it's a positive, affirming type email. To the Democrat senators, the question should be, why are you standing against ensuring only American citizens vote in American elections? Why are you standing against voter ID? You just had the opportunity to vote only for voter ID. Why did you vote against it? What will it take to get you to support these measures that the vast majority of Americans support? And one other thing that might be worth pointing out to some of them that I was thinking about yesterday is that the Democrat Party constantly says, and they just act like they are the protectors of democracy, and they are the only ones who can be protectors of democracy. Well, you can't have democracy, representative government, if you do not have consent of the governed. And you can't have consent of the governed without confidence in the integrity and the outcome of elections. When 80% of Americans want proof of citizenship to register to vote and voter ID, blocking that is not a fringe position, and blocking it is actually the fringe position. It's not doing what the people who represent you in this or who you represent in this representative democracy want you to do. And they're getting up and they're talking about all these other issues. They're talking about the cost of oil, they're talking about the Iran war, they're talking about healthcare, all sorts of other issues. And perhaps we need to address some of those issues, maybe all of those issues, but every single one of those issues is downstream from this one. We need the Save America Act passed, and it's not too much to ask, because this one ensures we actually are protecting our representative democracy. And so you might try to take something like that and talk to the Democrats, senators, and their staff about that. They're blocking, the ones who are blocking the Save America Act are the ones who claim to protect democracy. But you can't protect democracy by refusing to verify that the people voting in our elections are only American citizens. It's not democracy, and it is not protecting it. It will actually lead to destroying it. So those are the kind of messages that you can give. As far as a call to a place where you can get the call to action, you can go to our website at teapartypatriots.org, or you can go to passthesaveamericaact.com. Passthesaveamericaact.com. And we should be able to put that in the chat comments for you. Inside of that page, we have all sorts of information about the bill. We've got a take action button that you can click on. And we also have a section that debunks the myths and the lies from the people who are opposing the bill. So one of the biggest myths right now is that you have to re-register to vote and you have to show your birth certificate before the next election. And that's simply not correct. Everyone who is currently registered will be grandfathered in. If you have to re-register, so if you do something that requires, it triggers re-registering, like moving, then you will have to show your birth certificate. But if you have to re-register, you have to go get a new driver's license. And when you go to get a new driver's license, you also have to show your birth certificate for the real ID. So you register to vote in the same location. So we're just asking that when they register you to vote at the DMV, that they look at the birth certificate for that voter registration. They'll say things like non-citizen voting is illegal already, the bill is redundant. But the Democrats have actually gotten up and they keep saying, well, it's only just a little tiny bit. We don't really need it. Okay, so if it's illegal already and we don't need it, why is even a little bit getting through? And if you have a local election in your state, it may not be your Senate race, it may not be the race for president, but it could be a school board race. It could be a city council race that is only decided by fewer than a half a dozen votes. What if some of those people where you've got the problems that have slipped through and are non-citizens voting are the ones who affect the outcome of a race that has been decided by a handful of votes, possibly even fewer than 10. I've been a part of an election where my friend won by only 4 votes. So that kind of thing can happen. And then we have all the other myths. I'm happy to go through those if you need me to go through them one by one, but you also can read them by going to passthesaveamericaact.com. And then, Kevin, I'm happy to take questions from anyone who has questions. And I do see in the chat, one person is asking, will this recording be available? We should be able to make it available. If you've got questions, you're welcome to raise your hand and ask any questions. And then, let's see. Patty, thank you. Thank you for that comment, Patty. I work elections, and even if you don't have proper ID, there is always They always offered a chance to vote provisionally at the time. You're not turned away. That is exactly right. And actually, in this bill, when you go to register to vote, if you have not shown proof of citizenship, if you're not able to show proof of citizenship, so let's say they keep talking about women. You don't have your birth certificate anymore, or you have your birth certificate and you don't have your marriage certificate, or you have your birth certificate and your marriage certificate, but you don't have your divorce decree. Whatever it may be, you've got some of the paperwork, but not all of the paperwork. There is a way that you can go through, fill out an affidavit, attest that you are who you say you are, sign that under penalty of perjury, and then the government employee has to review it and accept it. But there is a way to verify it, even with whatever evidence may be available. Right. Lisa is saying it reminds her of no widespread voter fraud. Yes, that's right. How would we know if there are if there are non-citizens voting, if you haven't checked for proof of citizenship when you're registering them? First, that is the easiest way to verify everyone who is registered is indeed a citizen. When you go back on the back end and you are running it through the database from the federal government, that will check if the government knows the person is a non-citizen, but it doesn't verify necessarily proof of citizenship. So you're right about that. That's why we're trying to modify this. What if you have Democrat senators like Georgia? Well, Lisa, if you have seen the TSA lines in the Atlanta airport online or in the news, which I have, I think that Senator Ossoff might be under some pressure right now. He is letting the world's busiest airport have insane lines to get through the airport. He's not funding the government. He wants to put Americans through that agony at TSA because he's not funding it so he can keep the border wide open. And he's standing against making sure that only citizens vote in our elections and that we have proof or voter ID across the whole entire country. We already have voter ID in Georgia. So I think that calling him, reminding him we already have it in Georgia, that this isn't going to change anything for Georgians. It will change the verification of proof of citizenship at registration, but it's not going to be a huge hurdle for Georgians to be able to overcome. He should be one of the Democrats willing to make a deal on this bill. And if he doesn't, boy, I think it's going to be tough for him this fall.
Hey, Jay Beth,
yes.
Real quick. If anybody has a question that they want to ask, to raise your hand. If you click on the heart at the bottom of your screen that says react, there will be a little pop-up menu that comes up. And then if you click on raise hand, that will let us know that you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, Roger said he's going to use the narrative that I gave to talk to Senators Markey and Warren. So thank you for that, Roger. And Kevin, just interrupt me if anyone raises their hand and wants to ask a question. Do the senators understand that millions won't vote anymore if freedom is stripped from the American people? I don't know the answer to that, Ron, but here's what I do know. We have done polling. You can get this polling at teapartypatriots.org. Click on the button that says Americans want the Save America Act. And our polling shows that Americans want this, that 64, I think, percent of Americans think it is urgent to pass this bill before the next election. And we have put that out. We have sent it to senators and we have put it online. And in fact, the New York Times was emailing before this Zoom call. So we're trying to get that message out. Americans want it. We asked if, let me just give me 1 second while I pull that poll up, because there's an important question in this. It might be important when you're talking, especially to those blue state Democrats. I believe it's on page, okay. If you go through, I'll just put the link in the chat here. That's the link for our poll. And this is a page where you can get all the information about the poll. It's in the chat. Okay, on page 9, some people say that requiring a photo ID to vote would prevent some Americans from voting because obtaining an ID is too difficult. Other people say that photo IDs are a routine part of everyday life and that virtually all Americans can obtain one. Which of the following comes closer to your view? Requiring a photo ID Requiring a photo ID to vote is an unfair barrier that would prevent some Americans from voting, or requiring a photo ID to vote is a reasonable requirement that the vast majority of Americans can easily meet. 67% said it is a reasonable requirement that the vast majority of Americans can meet. And what is important to note here is that the only category where we did not have a majority support for that were people who are self-identified as liberal. Even people who say let's see, I thought we had one about vote. Oh, yeah. Even people who voted for Kamala Harris by 50% think it is a reasonable requirement that most people can get. Among African Americans or Black Americans, you've got 64% who agree with it. Among Hispanic people, you've got 64%. Among people under the age of 55, you have 63%. Of people over the age of 55, you have 72%. If you're married, remember they're saying married women is going to be so hard for people who are married, 71% agree with this. So Americans want this, and that is one of the things that you could do to convey to both Republican senators and, most importantly, Democrat senators right now. This is what the American people want, and we need to have the faith in our elections, and we deserve to have faith in our elections so we know when we go vote for you, we can trust the outcome of the election. Why would you deny your constituency that, especially when over 80% want it? I mean, I just think we've got to say, you claim you love democracy. You claim you want to protect democracy. Prove it. Protect democracy. Make sure only American citizens are voting in American elections. Make sure we show an ID so that each person who casts a ballot is the person they are indeed who they say they are. You like democracy? Protect democracy. This is how.
All right, Jenny Beth, we have a few hands up.
Okay.
Let's go to Deborah Jordan first. Deborah, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and thank you for, sorry about that, having this call. So I have a question or a comment about the DMV. Is it okay to cover that now, or are we just going to focus? Okay. So I'm in Pennsylvania, and our Governor Shapiro has, I believe, overstepped his gubernatorial process he decided that our process at the DMV would now become an opt-out system for voting. So my point is, non-citizens can obtain driver's licenses. And the problem is that the DMV is going to be involved as the most highly used form of ID. A non-citizen can actually have a driver's license. So it doesn't differentiate on the license if they're a citizen or not.
Right.
So I think that if that could be changed, where, it does show on the license if it's a real ID, if you're a veteran, etc., then if the DMV is still going to be involved and you're using their form of ID, then it should be actually useful, not an ID that doesn't say if they're a citizen or not. I think it should be marked on that form of ID. And I'll back that up with, in Pennsylvania, they did in 2019 an audit of the SURE system, which I have gone over with a fine-tooth comb. And the number of deficiencies from the DMV itself involved in elections was very high. And since 2019, those deficiencies have not been resolved. So I just always my heart stops when I hear about the DMV's involvement still, and I know it's because of the, HAVA Act and such. But my heart jumps when I hear, licenses as proof of ID, but it doesn't differentiate on the proof of ID being used if they're a citizen or not. So I just wanted to see if anybody else has any ideas or comments.
Yes. So here's the thing. The documents to get the real ID are the same documents we would use to show proof of citizenship, with the caveat and the understanding that you also can get a real ID if you are a non-citizen and are a permanent resident in America. So as a citizen, to get the real ID, the documents we would show as a citizen to get the real ID are the same documents that you would show to show proof of citizenship in America, which is what we're saying you would use to register to vote. You're right. Non-citizens also everywhere in the entire country can get a real ID. And they can do that if they are a permanent resident in America or they're legally allowed to be here. There are certain rules. I know permanent resident is one of them. There may be some other caveats for that. So you can get a real ID even if you're not a citizen. So that means that when you get your driver's license, there are a handful of states, I think it's only like 5 states, who do put citizen or non-citizen on the driver's license. If they did put it on and they clearly differentiated that, then maybe we wouldn't have to worry about that so much with the registration, because you could catch it through your driver's license when you go to vote, or through your real ID when you go to vote. But right now, because that has not happened, the bill has been created in the 2 pieces: show proof of citizenship to register, and then show your ID when you cast a ballot, so we know you are who you say you are. But the things that you were just saying, those are the same things I've learned about the real ID, and the situation with the motor voter. This bill originated because of the motor voter law, which is called the National Voter Registration Act. Back in the 90s, when President Clinton was president, America passed that bill and allowed registering to vote at the DMV. We now have over 50% of people who register to vote in the country. So the majority of people who register do so through the DMV. And I think that most of the time when there are non-citizens on the voting rolls, they are not on there to deliberately defraud our elections or to deliberately cause problems for America. I think that probably most of the time the way they have ended up on there, to the extent that they are on there, is they go get a driver's license, they're filling out a bunch of paperwork, they turn it in, and they've checked boxes without fully reading every single box. And we're all guilty of that. When you get those forms at the doctor's office or the driver's license, you're just trying to fill it out as quickly as you can so you can get through. And you may not be reading it as closely as you should. And I suspect some of the people who've gotten on are on by mistake. Now, there may be other people who have gotten on because you've got a malicious or ill-meaning DMV worker who's just going ahead and adding people even if they should not be on. But I think some of it is just accidents and mistakes. And I understand that there's real fraud and real problems with the elections. I think in this case, probably some of it is just they're getting on the rolls without even realizing that they got on the rolls. Who else, Kevin?
Well, we did have Valerie with her hand up, but she put her hand down, so I'm not sure if she still has a question.
We have a comment from Roger saying the National Republican Committee man from his group goes to Washington and Mar-a-Lago. That's good. And you asked, what can you do locally this weekend? So here's what you can do locally this weekend, but it's Friday at 11:39 Eastern time. So I understand what I'm about to say and the time constraints about what I'm about to say. The simplest thing that you can do that is the most effective is making phone calls to your United States Senator and urging everyone you know to make phone calls in support of the Save America Act. That's the most effective, simplest thing that you can do. So make the calls, ask others to make the calls. I understand we are in 2026 and people don't like to make phone calls. So if you'd prefer to email your senators, then sending an email is the second best thing, and asking people to send emails. So you send the email and you share that with others. Those are the simplest, most effective things you can do. And I would urge you to reach out today, to reach out tomorrow, and to reach out Sunday, because they are going to be here through the weekend. And I'm in DC right now. That's why I said here. The next thing that you can do is, if you are willing to go to their office either this afternoon or Monday and tell them in person what you want to see happen, politely, respectfully, peacefully, of course, but talk to them about why you want this bill to pass. Click through on our myths, print it out if you need to, hand that to them. You're welcome to print out our polling and give that to them as well, if that would help sway them to get to either stay on the bill until it is passed for Republicans, or to get Democrats to start coming our way. Then do that. In those conversations, if you are talking to Democrat senators' offices and you've got a relationship with the staffers, or at least can have a well-informed conversation with them, ask them, what would it take to get the senator to vote for this? Just start asking that question. What would it take to get them to vote? What is the true objection, and how can we get them to vote for it? And you can go through our myths and read those before you go in, so you're informed. But just ask that question and see if there's anything at all they'd be willing to do. And if there is, let us know. Reply to the email that got you on the Zoom and let us know, so that we can convey that information to people on Capitol Hill. And then the other thing is, if you're willing to host a sign waving event and to go out on a busy intersection and hold signs in support of the Save America Act, that would be very helpful as well. I do realize we're almost at noon on Friday. It's very short timing to be able to organize something like that for this weekend. But if you're willing to do that and you need any assistance from our team, my team can help. And then finally, if you happen to be in South Dakota, I'm going to be in South Dakota with Scott Pressler tomorrow in Rapid City, and then Sunday in Sioux Falls. And we are encouraging Leader Thune to continue through until this bill passes. And we'll be polite and respectful and peaceful, of course, and we will thank him for getting the bill to the floor, but then we're going to be there urging it to continue. So we're trying to give positive affirmation to him. And that's the same kind of thing you can do for Republican senators. And then if it's Democrat senators, urge them to support the bill. You could also do sign waving events outside their offices, their local offices. I suspect their local offices will not be staffed on Saturday or Sunday. So you could maybe do that this afternoon, or you could work to do that on Monday or Tuesday. And if you do that and you need any help from us, let us know. Make sure, of course, that you're peaceful, that you're respectful, that you're polite, because we can protest and still be all three of those things.
All right, there's a few questions in the chat log. Deborah wants to know, when we contact our Democratic senators, should we push the voter ID only passage, or should we focus on the bill in its entirety?
No, I would focus right now on the bill in its entirety. You can highlight, look, you said you were for, if you're a Democrat, the Democrats are saying that you support voter ID. Why did you allow the voter ID portion to fail on Thursday night? But we want the whole thing passed, but for goodness sakes, why didn't you just vote for voter ID? So you could see something like that. So you're calling them out for allowing that to fail, but continue to push for the entire bill to pass. Kevin, I see that one person is asking, thoughts on this is an email to Dem senators. Why are you standing against protecting democracy? Why are you standing up for voter suppression by diluting our votes with non-citizens? Yeah, I think that's right. And then pass the Save America Act. Who else, Kevin?
All right. Ron wants to know, what is the drop dead date for the Senate to get the job done and President to sign the final legislation so the midterms are protected?
I don't know the answer to that. So anything that I say right now might undermine what is actually the truth. So I'm going to refrain from answering that question. I think we have a little bit of time still to get it done, but I certainly voting starts in Virginia around September 15th. It starts 45 days before Election Day. So it would need to be done by August 15th for Virginia, I would imagine. So it's done 30 days before voting starts. But I don't know the actual legal requirement for that.
All right. Let's see. Patty Weaver wanted to know whether Fetterman voted against voter ID. Did they actually do a roll call vote? I don't think
No,
they
they did
did.
not do a roll call. They did a unanimous consent, which means I call for unanimous consent for this amendment. I don't remember the exact motion, but that would mean that if nobody objects, it goes through and it passes. But if somebody objects, it automatically kills it. So that's what happened on that one, rather than it being a roll call vote.
All right. Emery wants to know, wants you to give some points on how to refute the poll tax argument.
Okay, so if you look at our document about the myths, and I'm going to copy that link over here for you. Let me put that in the chat so that if you are on your computer, you can pull it up. The poll tax is the third or fourth one. 84% of Americans say only citizens should vote, including 76% of Democrats and 78% of liberals. After Georgia strengthened voter ID laws, everyone said it would collapse. They said it was Jim Crow 2.0. They canceled which game was it? We won the World Series. They canceled the other game midseason for baseball. But we saw a record number turnout of minorities voting after that law passed in Georgia. So it falls on its face. But the other thing that's really important about this, when it comes to the poll tax argument, what they're saying is this is I've listened to several of the Democrats debate it. So they'll say this is a poll tax, and here's why: 150 million Americans don't have a passport, and it costs anywhere from $100 to $200 to get a passport. Okay, all three of those things are correct, and you can show a birth certificate to show proof of citizenship. So you don't need to pay all that money. Most birth certificates are probably like $24. But even more important than that, if you're already registered and you have not triggered the need to re-register, you're still registered. So you don't have to do anything. You just show up the way you normally do. It isn't removing people from the voter rolls if they're already on the rolls. Now, it is possible that they push the rolls up against the Department of Homeland Security, and that comes back, and some voters are flagged and they have to show additional documentation. In that case, they'd have to show a birth certificate. They could show a passport, but they may show a birth certificate. The other thing is, if they don't have either one and they truly cannot get it, let's say they got flagged from DHS, or they moved completely unexpectedly because their house burned down, and the very next day is the last day to register to vote, and they have to get registered, and they're trying to get everything done, and they just don't have the documents for whatever life reason. The bill allows, on page 12 of the text of the House bill, it allows for attestation, which means you can just affirm you are who you say you are, provide the evidence you're able to provide that not just you are who you say you are, but that you are a citizen, and sign under penalty of perjury. And somebody else has to review that and accept it on the government side, and then you are registered. So if you absolutely cannot do that, there is an accommodation for it. There's also a grant in the bill to help pay for the people who can't afford to get documents. I don't know exactly the wording of that. I've forgotten the wording of that, but there is ability to help pay for people who could not afford to get the documents as well. So it's a lie. The people who are saying that are not reading the bill. And when they say 150 million people don't have passports and a passport costs $150 or $200, And if you're already registered to vote, you stay registered to vote, period. If you move and you have to re-register, you also will have to get a new real ID because you've now changed addresses. And when you go to get that real ID, you also have to show proof of citizenship or proof of permanent residency. So you're still taking the same documents that you would be taking because you have to have a real ID. That's how I would refute it. Kevin, do we have more questions?
Steve says, why don't the Republicans start including sorry, when somebody types a new thing, it
That was my
screws
fault.
up my screen. Why don't Republicans start including info on how and where to get the required documents instead of just scoffing at the fact that everyone should be able to get them?
They are doing that. If you listen to Senator Mike Lee, he absolutely is doing that. And in fact, I think that explaining what's actually in the bill rather than talking about the cost of how much a birth certificate is the most important thing. When we go back on our document about the poll tax, what's on our website also is on a one-page printable that you can share online. We can adjust that language to add some of the arguments that I just made, and then you could use those for Jim Crow and a poll tax.
All right. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, before we close, Kevin, let me just pull up the text to the bill from the House. Now, understand that the text from the bill from the House is not the amendment that President Trump, it does not have everything President Trump wants in it. And so there is an amendment in there that replaces that text and adds to it, and that is likely going to be longer than what I'm sending to you. So this part will change, but this is a language from the House, and it's important to just take a look at that and read that. If you're in the chat right now and you can look at the chat and click through, go to the bottom of page 12. And on page 12, it says additional processes in certain cases, a process for those without documentary proof. And read that. Each state shall establish a process under which an applicant who cannot provide documentary proof of citizenship may, if they sign an attestation under penalty of perjury that they are a citizen and submit any other evidence they are able to submit, the local official demonstrating that the applicant is a United States citizen may accept them as a United States citizen. So there's a little bit of paperwork involved, like they have to go fill it out and somebody has to review what they're saying, but that is okay because they still can vote. And I think some of the best ways to counter some of these arguments is just to say, here's a link to the bill, go read it. It's on page 12. Or here's a link to the bill, go read it. It's on page 12, and then screenshot it and attach that if you're posting it on social media. Attach the section, highlight it, and just show people, no, you're wrong. You can. The bill from the House that I just posted in there, it's 32 pages. And the last page is nothing. It's just a title page. And the page before that has the effective date. And that's all that it has on it. So my point is, it's really a 30-page bill. It's not very long. If you can take like 20 minutes today to read it, it will inform you so much of what the bill actually says and just give you the confidence to go make the counter arguments for it. But if you get an argument you don't know how to counter, reach out to us and we'll help you figure out how to counter it. Okay. And Kevin, you're saying that's everything? I think he's It looks like that is everything. Okay,
Sorry, I
so
was muted.
okay. Someone said you can hide a lot of things in 30 pages. You can hide a lot of things in 30 pages. You could hide a lot in a paragraph if it has a whole bunch of numbers and says we strike this and add that. But this one, it really is one of the easiest bills that I've read. It is pretty easy to read. If you don't understand part and have questions, let us know. And then let me just remind you, let me go back through a very quick summary because I know some people just joined like 5 or 6 minutes ago. I'm not going to make it long. So the Save America Act does 5 things now, or we're attempting to get it to do 5 things. Proof of citizenship to register to vote and making sure only citizens are on the voter rolls. Voter ID to vote, mail-in ballots for military and sick and disabled people. So think of that as saving American voters. Then you've got only no men and women's sports. So think of that as saving American sports. And then you have no transgender surgery on minors. So think of that as saving American children, saving American voters, saving American sports, and saving American children. It is being debated right now on the floor of the Senate. It is possible to go off the bill and have committees meeting in the Senate. It is possible to go off the bill and have the confirmation for the DHS nominee, which is Senator Markwayne Mullin. And it is also possible to go off the bill and vote for DHS funding as long as they come back to the bill. So they still can go off and come back to it. We want to get to a point where Republican senators are negotiating and talking to Democrat senators in good faith to figure out how we can get this bill passed before the elections and passed this year. And that is the effort right now. And the best way to do that is to keep the Senate talking about the bill as long as it takes to get it done. And so we're asking Republican senators, we're thanking them for bringing it to the floor and urging them to continue to press to get this bill passed and not to stop debating it until it's done. And then for the Democrat senators, putting pressure on them and asking them, making sure that they understand this is what over 80% of Americans want, including over 70% of Democrats. Pass this bill, get it done. This is what you're elected to do, to represent your constituency. Get it done. And we need calls going to both Republicans and Democrats. They are debating throughout this weekend. The goal is to keep them there through this weekend and then next week, and then we take it from there. We do want them to continue debating and not have their recess and spring break at the end of next week. So urge for that. And we'll see where it goes as we head into next week. And if you think that this was a useful Zoom, and you'd like to see another one next week, let us know and we can do another one or two of these next week. So make those calls or send emails to the senators. And then if you need any help from us at all, you can reply to the original email about the Zoom, or you can email me at jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. And our website for this bill is passthesaveamerica.act.com. passthesaveamerica.act.com. But if you can't find it, just go to teapartypatriots.org and you can click through from there. Thank you, everyone. If we didn't get to your comment in the chat, we'll try to follow up with you afterwards, and then we will talk to you soon. But again, email me at jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. Thank you so much. Have a great day.